Hey, you might recall, I think like maybe 6 to 8 months ago, I ran a series about red flags. Now, what is the absolute number one thing we love about a red flag? Well, only that you notice them, I guess. Only that you see them, you pick up on them enough time to get out of the situation. That's what we love about a red flag. We don't love them at all. We hate them. We want them out of our lives. So we want to be able to clock them, okay? Clack, not glock. Don't get crazy. But you want to be able to clock them. TikTok, time is up. No more of this. Okay? So if you guys remember that series, I did a 6-part episode on red flags that you see early on in relationships and dating that tend to often lead to a toxic relationship cycle and are just kind of like a little key indicator that that's probably what's coming. And that if you can pick up on them early and know how to address them, you can avoid all of that pain that results in typically. Okay, so I went 1 through 5, and then I gave you a 6th episode where I showed you exactly how to handle them when they come up. I always meant to come back to this because there weren't only 5. When I first wrote this list out, I came up with about 20, okay? I think that I've condensed it since then, so it might be less, but I always knew I would come back to it, and here I am. If you want to brush up on red flags 1 through 5, that series is called Dark Psychology. It's still up on my channel, and it's absolutely wonderful. It's really good, especially number 2, the switch up, which is love bombing to devaluation stage. That is an important episode to watch. Check that out if you haven't seen them. Check them all out if you haven't seen them. We're going to now do episodes 6 through 10. This episode is going to be number 6. Red flag number 6 is actually I don't remember what it is. Red flag number 6: blaming, scapegoating, and shaming. Let's get started. There are 3 parts to this red flag. 3. And there are multiple ways that people can display this red flag in each of those 3 parts. We're going to start with scapegoating, okay? Scapegoating is something that can be done to a group of people. It can be done on a societal level. It can be done to an entire race of people. It can be in politics. But when it comes to relationships, we're typically going to be talking about romantic relationships here, obviously, with this topic. But this is something that people first often notice within their family structure. So there will often be a scapegoat in a family if there is maybe a narcissistic parent. And even on a very low level, I think sometimes a lot of families just kind of have a natural scapegoat, somebody who gets accidentally maybe blamed more than others in the family. Scapegoating is when you are unfairly placing blame for something that is actually the result of maybe something bigger with more influence, or actually someone else's fault, or the fault of the person who is blaming and they're projecting to take away from the consequences of their own actions or the consequences brought on by multiple people that they don't want to deal with that problem on a large scale or a real scale. They would blame a more easy target. If everybody gets up for church in the morning and they're late, maybe many factors made that family late for church, but Johnny, the scapegoat of the family, it's going to be him, that last minute needing to go to the bathroom before they went out the door. The whole morning is going to be blamed on Johnny because Johnny's the scapegoat. Okay, when really it was the whole family that led to the bigger issue of being late to church because they were more than a couple of minutes late. Johnny going to the bathroom isn't what all led to them being late, but he's going to get blamed. He's maybe the youngest, or he's maybe the one who is the least likely to stand up for himself, won't fight back. So scapegoating is essentially a way to escape culpability. It's a way to escape from feeling the consequences of your own downfalls, your own shortcomings. If this person has a scapegoat, they want someone to blame anything that goes wrong on instead of it ever being their fault. They're freeing themselves of having to take accountability for the things that go wrong in whatever structure they're doing this in. If they're having a scapegoat at work, they're not going to want to be taking responsibility for the problems that are going wrong at work. They're just going to blame that bad employee that's always the problem. Then they don't have to take on any of that accountability, any of that blame. And then when it's done in a relationship, it's the same thing. If you guys forget about an obligation you had, a prior engagement that you had, you get there late, you don't show up at all, if a bill doesn't get paid, if they forget someone in their family's birthday, something like that, they're going to throw you under the bus for it. They're going to say,
You were supposed to wake me up. You were supposed to remind me about it. You know I can't remember things. You never do what I ask of you. You never want to help me.
You're going to put all the blame on you. It's always your fault if the lights get shut off. It's like,
why didn't you remember to tell me about this bill? Why didn't you just let me know? If you can't do anything, why don't you let me just take over it? I guess you can't remember.
if you guys have children together, the kids are misbehaving.
Why don't you ever get those kids in line? Don't you know how to be a parent? I worked all day. What, do I need to do everything? You can't help with that?
Every single thing is going to be your fault. If they leave their shoes outside and it rains, it's your fault.
Didn't you see them outside the door? Wow, you can't help me out? I know you were downstairs. Now these shoes are ruined. Thanks a lot.
That is a huge red flag, okay? So if you are noticing that you are getting blamed for things that they are doing wrong, that are just an accident, it's just a circumstance that any one of you could kind of shoulder the blame, or it was just a misstep and they had a part in it too, but they're putting all the blame on you. Big red flag. That's scapegoating for sure. Especially if it's happening repetitively. People that get put in that position often, they're typically people that don't speak up for themselves a lot. There's a sense that the people that dominate and manipulate people like this they feel an energy, they feel that they can do this. So they might test it out a little bit at first, and that's when you want to notice the red flag. If you know that you have a history of insecurity, if you have a history of low self-esteem, if you have a history of being a people pleaser, if you're a pushover, all of those, if you're an anxious attachment, you want to be really on the lookout for this, because with someone who's willing to blame you for things that they have a part in or were completely on them, then you give those type of people an inch, they're going to take a mile and a mile and a mile and a mile. They're going to take many miles. So you will get yourself stuck in a trap of being a constant scapegoat. And that is no life to live. No person that already feels low like that is going to have a positive experience in life if they are getting blamed for everything. That's going to tear them apart. So it's very painful. It's rude. They do say that scapegoating is very common amongst narcissistic behavior. So if you are in a relationship with a narcissist, or even just somebody with those narcissistic tendencies, behaviors, you're almost certainly going to become their scapegoat if you stay with them. So hopefully by watching this series, you are not going to end up with narcissistic individuals. You're going to clock it early on. Anyone is really capable at some time pushing the blame off on someone else. We all are guilty of this at times. It's when someone strategically does this often. And when I say strategically, I don't mean that they have this diabolical plan in mind all the time in the forefront of their mind, in their conscious mind at all. I just mean that they're going to repetitively set up this dynamic, and it's going to be a constant in their life. Scapegoating serves to protect the ego, which we know within a narcissist is a fragile structure. It also upholds the reputation of someone. If it's being done within a family, it's to give the family an overall reputation of being a reputable family, while they can just place the blame of everything that goes wrong on this one bad seed. And if it's done in a relationship, it's going to give sympathy to the person who's putting up with these things, and the scapegoat is just going to look like the drama, the problem, the person who's always messing up, and this wonderful soul that's just always accepting all of these mistakes, all of these difficult things to deal with that they're putting up with from the goodness of their heart. They're going to get sympathy. They're going to get kudos for that. They really like to portray to the world that that's who they are, when it's typically a lot more the other way around. This definitely happened to me in a previous relationship. One example of it was I rented a place with my boyfriend at the time and two of his siblings. And so his siblings were around all the time. My brother, I'm very close with him and obviously would want him to visit at times. That was normal. And so the first time that he came to visit, it was approved by everyone. Prior to it happening, I asked my housemates about this and they said it was fine. And when it was time for him to leave, my boyfriend at the time, without me being present, had asked him to stay longer, offered it to him. It was not something that was needed. It's not like he didn't have somewhere to go. It's not like anybody was like,
I don't want you to leave.
We're making a big deal out of it. There was nothing like that happening. It was completely free will. He just asked him to stay. I don't know why he did. He just did. And I thought it was great. I was like,
wow, thank you.
And so he stayed longer. Okay. And then I don't know exactly, because I was never present for these types of conversations, but I don't know if it was that my boyfriend's siblings complained about my brother being there longer, what happened, but my boyfriend was often in these moods of stonewalling me and just a bad mood for no reason. It was constant. So I would never know what was going on. And I was trying to get the answers out of him at one point, and he started to imply.
Who else has guests stay over as long as your brother did?
And I was like,
Well, the answer to that question is no one. But also, the thing is, your siblings are here. I also wouldn't care at all. I would love for anyone in your family to come stay. It would not bother me one bit. And also, I had it approved. And also, you invited him to stay longer. It was you. So that's really confusing. I don't understand how you can blame me for that. Yes, my brother stayed an extra amount of time. I think it was maybe 2 weeks. But it was only going to be 1 week, and that was agreed upon by everyone, and you made it 2 weeks.
I was made a scapegoat in that situation, and many other situations, because I found out he was going behind my back and he was talking with his siblings about this as though I did that. He was making me the fall person for that, and not even mentioning that he's the one that invited my brother to stay an extra week. Not even mentioning it. And so, obviously, in that situation, it looked like I was inconsiderate of other people. And it's just crazy. That's like torture for people that are like how I was. Because you're constantly living to try to get things right for people and just beating yourself up every day and stressing to the max over making sure you don't upset anyone. And so to be gaslit like that and to be scapegoated like that is just absolute torture for someone like how I was back then. It wrecked me. And you don't know how to resolve it because someone is just blatantly blaming it on you when they did it. So it's terrible. Why would someone who cares about you put you in a situation like that with their family? The reason that they're doing that is because they're looking out for themselves. They made that choice on a whim. I guess he was trying to look nice and cool and giving for my brother, but then played both sides of the fence. I guess I don't know if his siblings were upset about it, but if they were, then I would have had my brother go home immediately. I didn't know that. So I just got blamed for something that I had absolutely no inkling about. And that happened frequently. That happened repetitively, over and over until I couldn't take anymore. The second part of this red flag is blame shifting. This is a specific type of blame where when you have a concern that you are raising with your partner or the person that you're dating, you come to them in a very gentle type of cordial way and you bring up a concern. You're not blaming them. You're not attacking them. You just bring up kindly and calmly that you have this concern and it's making you feel this way and you would like to discuss it. And it's concerning something that they are a part of and they are doing. And if that is met with them immediately turning it over to something that you're actually doing, whether it has anything to do with that situation or not. Sometimes it could be that it's the same situation you're bringing up and they're actually just reversing the blame onto you about that. They're saying that's actually your fault and why would you even be bringing that up because you're the one doing that? Or it can be something totally off topic. It could be something that's they're blaming you for just to completely distract you from them feeling like you're blaming them. Now, be careful with this one because you want to make sure that you're not accusing or attacking them first. Even if you're certain that they did something wrong, you're certain that they're to blame for something. In a relationship, the best thing that you can do is literally forget about blame. You don't need to blame anyone for things. People make mistakes. Things happen. People need to accept accountability. And so what you do is you express your feelings about how an action or a behavior has made you feel. And then you allow that person space to validate your feelings and to be accountable for that. And hopefully they are at a place in their development that they will do that without much prodding. If they aren't and you feel like you want to help them along with that, you guys can talk at different times about how validation is important in relationships and how it's really important not to blame each other, how it's really important to acknowledge each other's feelings and really see where each other's coming from and to take accountability and that you don't have to feel guilty about it. It's good to own when you had a part in something, okay? But that needs to be done by that person, not by you blaming them. Nobody needs to be blamed. If you are coming at someone and you are blaming them, it's going to be a common response that they're probably going to blame shift. Okay, that's just kind of human nature. You want to check for this red flag inside yourself probably first, because that's really common. It's not saying you're a bad person. It's like literally just until we learn these things, that's our nature. That's what you're probably going to do. So as long as you have already dealt with that in yourself and you know how to present a concern with your partner the proper way, what you want to watch for is when you healthily and very kindly present a concern that did not blame them. that they immediately jump to blaming you. You can give some grace. This part is up to you, okay? And it just depends on what you're willing to work with, okay? Because there's going to be a lot of people in this world, I'm going to tell you, that are not going to know all of these things, okay? And they might just need some time to catch on, and they might be very capable of that. And so give grace if you can. That's as long as they're willing to sit there and talk with you and they're not being cruel and they're not just blame shifting to blow you off, give them some grace. And the thing about relationships is you're going to possibly waste some time, okay? You have to be okay with that. You might waste some time with the wrong people. It's part of the process. Don't think of it as a waste of time. Think of it as part of the journey to what you really want. Give them grace the first time. If this becomes a pattern, then that's when it's the red flag, okay? So this is not going to be one that I would say would ever be one and done. But make sure you watch out for this. I'll pull an example from the red flags video that I did before that teaches you how to address these red flags. So this example was your date is picking you up. You're running behind about 5 minutes because you got a call from your boss, and you rush out to the car and you're like,
I'm so sorry. I was on the phone with my boss. She called at the last minute. I'm so sorry I made us late.
and they say,
That's no problem. It's okay. Don't worry about it. It'll be fine. We're just about 5 minutes late.
and then when you get to the restaurant and you're inside, then they are making comments passive aggressively when someone says something about,
You missed the appetizers when we ordered, but they'll be back around. You can put your order in.
then they say something like,
Yes, because sometimes you can't help it when some people don't respect people's time. And, I always say, if you're on time, you're late. And if you're early, you're on time. It's a respect thing.
and they're saying this in front of you, and you're just like,
Okay.
you're thinking in your head,
Well, that's rude because I was late and you're basically shaming me in front of me, but passive aggressively. Okay? When you said it was fine. When you said it was okay and you were so cool about it in the car, but now it's not.
when you address this with that person, when you bring it up the next day and you're like,
I felt a little embarrassed and confused when you brought it up at the restaurant in front of your friends. And I wasn't sure if you felt the way you said you felt in the car or if you felt the way you said at the restaurant, because those two things weren't the same.
and then if that person, when you say that, immediately goes to,
I don't know why you're worried about how I talk to my friends. You're not going to control how I talk to my friends. It's just the way I talk, and I'm sorry that it offended you, but maybe you shouldn't be late.
and they'd make it about you being late when what you're bringing up is their passive aggressive behavior, okay? That would be a blame shift. That's what I'm talking about. Or when you say,
I really have been feeling neglected because we haven't been spending time together.
and they say,
Well, maybe you should talk to yourself about that because you're the one that's constantly doing all your little hobbies and hanging out with your little buddies. Why don't you go hang out with them if you feel so neglected?
it's like, okay. It's really confusing sometimes with this one, okay? Because some really great people that might just need some improvement in this area could display this behavior. And so it's going to be a matter of when you point this out to them and you talk about it and you say, when I bring you a concern of mine, I'm bringing it up because I want to talk about that concern, because I want to talk about and share with you how I feel, how something is making me feel. And when you come to me with a concern, what I would do is I would listen to that concern. I wouldn't think about myself. I would think about you have the floor. You're talking about your concern. I would think about how you are feeling, and I would be giving you validation for feeling that way. I would be letting you know how I can understand how you feel. And I would be trying, if I didn't understand, I would be trying to figure out how to understand. I would be trying to get to the bottom of it. I'm trying to understand the path to how you got to feeling that way, the course of events, not immediately jumping to how I can protect myself and how I can put up this wall of defense and be like you're coming at me and like you're blaming me. And I would probably tell my partner, whenever I'm talking to you about something that I'm feeling, even if you're involved and even if it was your behavior, I'm not blaming you. I'm just letting you in to let you know how something made me feel. You're not in my feelings, so you don't always know, and I want you to know. I want you to be a part of that. I want to be connected that way, and I want to know how you feel. I want to know how things make you feel. I care about that. So please, let's both mutually share, and let's not get defensive with each other. As long as we say it to each other in a healthy way, you don't have to ever worry that I'm coming at you to blame you for something. You don't have to be afraid of that. Because avoidant personalities, this is a common reaction to when they're feeling criticized, is for them to get defensive, for them to blame you, to blame shift. That doesn't mean that they're a narcissist. That doesn't mean that they're a big red flag, that they can't change that behavior. Okay, but it's when you bring that candid, authentic conversation like I just described, and that's responded to with disdain, more pushback, or they don't care, or then they just keep doing it. And it becomes pretty evident that even though you've made it clear that
I'm trying to let you into how I feel, and I also care about how you feel.
you're telling them that, it's starting to seem like maybe they don't care how you feel, and maybe they're more interested in protecting that ego, making sure that nothing is ever their fault, and doing those behaviors. And if they're just stuck on that, that is an absolute red flag, whether they're meaning to do it or not. I mean, if somebody cannot accept accountability in a relationship, they're not going to be able to be in a relationship, or they're going to be in one that's very beneficial to them, but not beneficial to the other person at all. I had recently come across a study that was talking about how if you choose to validate the other person first for their feelings, it's been shown to have a correlation to having a better outcome of that conflict in every situation across the board. Even in situations such as hostage negotiation, that is a pretty big indicator that validation is a strong tool to use in this type of a setting. It just proves that it makes people feel heard, and then they can let their guards down and not have that defensiveness going on where they're not going to want to blame you back. Now, that same study notated that there is one situation where validation is not going to get you anywhere, and it actually might put you in a worse situation. And that is when you are dealing with someone who is a narcissist or someone who is attempting intentionally to manipulate you. They're operating from a place of needing control. They have no capability. They have no even scope of possibly admitting they're wrong in any manner. So in that situation, you are going to put yourself in a worse situation by validating that person's feelings, because they're just coming from a place of wanting to dominate and control and manipulate the situation to where they don't have to take any accountability. And it's because in a relationship, when you validate your partner, there's a need for a reciprocal validation. Otherwise, it's a one-sided relationship. And if you're always giving that validation to your partner, that's going to typically, in a normal, healthy relationship, going to facilitate a reciprocal validation back to you. And then you're going to resolve that conflict in some way. You're going to come to a compromise. You're both going to feel heard. What needs to happen for a conflict to actually be resolved is that each person needs to feel like they were heard. They need to feel like their feelings mattered and were understood, and that there's some type of plan in place for their needs to get met, or that to not happen again. In a relationship with someone who's trying to manipulate you, or where this red flag would be existing, where there's a blame shift specifically going on, it's not going to help you to validate that person, because one, they feel entitled to validation. So when you validate them, it doesn't do what it does for a healthy relationship. It doesn't make them feel heard and then make them feel like they can lower their guard and then reciprocate that. It just further confirms what they already believe. They see it as,
Yeah, duh, of course. I know I'm valid for what I'm saying. Why are you even feeding me that? Okay, move on. What are you going to do about fixing what you're doing wrong?
that's how they're going to feel, because they are entitled. They feel like it's natural that you should be validating them. They feel like that's what they deserve. They don't feel like they need to give that to you, though. You don't deserve that. They are right. They are the all-knowing, always correct person. And then you just kind of solidify and enable them to continue what they're already doing to you. It can be in an indirect way facilitating more emotional abuse for you. So once you catch it, that's why you would want to notice that red flag and not continue to do that, because it's not going to get you anywhere. And that's why it can be confusing sometimes, because that person, if you're not validating them, because their opinion or what they're saying is based on them trying to manipulate, or they're gaslighting you, or they're blame shifting, or they're bringing up something that they feel that is based on something that didn't happen. They're fabricating something again. They're telling you something that you do wrong that you know you don't do, and you can't validate that. You can't validate a person that's trying to exert their control over you based on skewed perceptions of the way things happened. And they're not willing to listen to you, and they're not willing to reciprocate that validation, but they will try to make you feel like it is the same thing. And they might come back at you with something like
this, and why aren't you validating my feelings? And you're not doing what you preach about.
And that's why I'm here talking about this, because I've been there. And it's so easy for it to happen. It's so effective. And it really does throw you for a loop. But what you want to notice is, if you're the one that came to them with raising a concern. And that's the only time that they turn around and then bring up their feelings and blame shift onto you and try to go over to like what they're feeling about that and move the blame onto you. If that's the only time they do that, that's the red flag. Because if it was a real concern of theirs, they would bring that concern up to you on their own. They wouldn't take a moment where you are the one bringing the concern and then bring that concern up. And just, again, this is something that defensiveness can cause someone to do. So you want to check yourself for that too. Check yourself for if you tend to sink into defensiveness. Check yourself for how you're bringing the concern so that you can just keep that off the table. And that won't be a question in your mind of like, well, could it be me? Make sure you're good in that so you don't have to question that and you can see this for what it is. All right, the final part of this red flag is if your partner or the person you're dating seems to want to blame you for something that someone else does involving you that you're bringing up or that they witness, and instead of blaming that person who did those actions, they blame you for that person's actions. Okay, this is a huge red flag. I don't want to say one and done on this one, but almost, because it's just senseless. Why would your partner be responsible for someone else's actions that they have no way of controlling in any way, shape, or form? It's kind of ridiculous. It's a form of scapegoating, but I'm just separating it out in its own category for the fact that scapegoating is really centered around avoiding accountability and maintaining ego and reputation, sacrificing you due to a lack of concern for your feelings and being out of touch with empathy and out of touch with self-awareness. This type of a blame, where they're blaming you for other people's actions that aren't their actions. So they don't need to take accountability because they didn't do anything wrong. They witnessed something or they heard about something that they don't like. So this isn't about not wanting to accept accountability. This is about, it could be about a few things, but it's about punishment. It's about control. It's about trying to make you feel small. And one way that someone will gain a sense of control over you or a sense of superiority is blaming a lot of things on you, making you feel like you're a big mistake, you're a big error, you constantly do everything wrong, it's always your fault. So it's also rooted sometimes in jealousy. They could be jealous about, for instance, I'm sure many people have had a boyfriend or girlfriend who gets mad at them for some other third party flirting with them. This person just came up and started flirting with them. And because of their anger at that and their insecurity, their jealousy, they will take that out on the partner that got flirted with. I don't know if they're intimidated. I don't know if they don't have enough confidence to actually do that, or they don't want to reveal that they're jealous like that. Personally, I think that it demonstrates that they know very well that they are overreacting and that it's ridiculous, because if they didn't think it was ridiculous and they really thought that person was so out of line, they would say that to that person because that's the person who did it. But instead they're taking it out on you behind the scenes where people don't see it and blaming it on you. They're taking that anger that they feel, that they know they can't show in public, that they can't show to some other person because they would be embarrassed, they would be ashamed. So it's about jealousy, insecurity, control, manipulation, superiority, all of that. So it's a little bit different. I'll give you an example of this that happened to me. This is the biggest one. It happened all the time. I have many examples of this, but the, I think, biggest one that was the most baffling to me, that I was just so intent on getting him to see that this didn't make any sense and that how could you blame this on me and this isn't right. But I came to realize one of his needs was to make me feel like I'm always in the wrong. He needed to make me feel small. He enjoyed making me feel like I did something wrong and then me groveling over it and trying to prove it to him. He enjoyed that. He wasn't going to be swayed. He already, in the back of his mind, whether unconscious or subconscious, he knew that I wasn't the one at fault. And that's what I just had to realize. But at first, I was all about proving it. And I was all about showing the absolute obvious logic about it. But it won't work. And that's when you need to recognize this red flag. So an example is my ex had a very close friend that he was roommates with before I moved in with him. So they had a house together where my boyfriend lived with his friend's long-term girlfriend that he also had a child with. So they had their family and then my boyfriend. They all lived in the house together. Okay? So I had been seeing him for, I want to say, over 6 months at that point. So I had gotten to know his roommate pretty well and the family. We got along great. And everything was good, okay? So one night when they were getting ready to move out of that house, they were having a kind of a going away party. where a lot of people were over and people were drinking. And the roommate had gotten a little bit tipsy. He was a personable person, but he was a little bit more, I guess, affectionate, more touchy-feely, lovey-dovey, outgoing, I would say. More close quarters when he would drink. And he had never done anything that I thought was inappropriate with me. He hadn't touched me, anything like that. Never flirted with me. I was becoming good friends with his girlfriend. I had spent lots of time with his young daughter. That was not even a question at all. That night, my boyfriend was out on their back patio, and they had sliding glass doors, and I had went in to go to the restroom. Everyone had kind of dispersed. People had gone home. I don't even know that anyone else was still there. Maybe his brother. I'm not sure where he was at this moment. I had been outside just by myself with my boyfriend, and then I had gone inside to use the restroom. I was coming back outside, so I was walking towards the patio door, which was a big sliding glass door. My boyfriend was on the outside of it. He could see inside. I'm walking towards him, right? On my way through, I encounter his roommate in the line of sight, okay? And his roommate says something to me of the effect, something very kind, and it was something about, "You're great. I'm so glad so-and-so met you. I want to make sure you keep in touch. We want to see more of you. Like, don't become a stranger." You know, because they're moving. And I wasn't going anywhere. He was acting really sentimental, maybe in his feelings, but it was obviously some alcohol talking. And it was totally innocent. It was fine. There was nothing bad going on. We were right in line of sight of my boyfriend. And this is one of his best friends. And his girlfriend is asleep in the bed. And there's nothing odd going on here. He gives me a hug at this moment when he's saying this. He's basically saying, like, "I'm so glad that you've met my friend, and I want you to remain in his life, and we love your son, and hope we see more of you. Hope we continue to see you around. And thanks for being so good to my friend," and gives me a hug. Okay, I admit, if I'm being really honest about this hug, I'm a timid sort of person at times. If it takes me a really long time to warm up to people. So did I feel a little uncomfortable? Yes, yeah, maybe a little bit. But do I typically feel uncomfortable when people show me affection like that or give me an innocent hug? Yes, I mean, that's a common thing for me. So it wasn't as though I felt like it was inappropriate. To better describe this hug, it was pressed upon me. So it was like I'm coming through, not expecting anybody to be in there. It's kind of gone dark in the house, and I guess maybe he was getting something out of the kitchen. I'm not sure, but he had been in the kitchen that I had to walk through. He just came up and started, you know, when tipsy people start talking to you, they're just like,
"You're the best."
Whatever, you know, whatever they say. If it's not an angry drunk person, it's usually really nice stuff. And I felt like it was kind and genuine. And then he just went in for a hug. I'm in full view of my boyfriend, who is right outside. I can see him through the glass. I know that he can see. I give this man a hug back. I'm not like latching on to him. I'm just like, "Thank you. Yeah, I'll be around." And I go outside with my boyfriend, okay, who is visibly upset at this point. He's not answering me when I speak to him. He's disgruntled. He is a totally different mood than when I left to go to the bathroom. So I say,
"What's wrong?"
And he proceeds to not want to tell me what is wrong. So I then don't get to find out what is the problem. He eventually, later that night, hints at it, this was always another problem. I could never just get a direct answer for what his issue was. He would hint at it or make some off-the-wall comment that I'd have to like decipher codes. And I eventually determined that he's upset about the hug. Okay, so I'm like, okay, he's just mad, I guess. That's how he feels. Maybe someone has done him wrong in the past. Maybe he has some issues with trust. And I was just kind of like trying to be supportive of that. And never did I think that he was getting angry and thinking that I did something inappropriate, because he saw me. Like he witnessed it. So I just was kind of confirming.
I don't believe that it was inappropriate or a bad intention, but I understand how you feel, and I'm sorry that happened. I didn't really know what to do. I was just put in that situation.
Because he hugged me. And then it developed further to eventually revealing that he was absolutely mad at me. He was blaming me. He eventually goes on to tell me that this person, when they're drunk, tends to get a little touchy-feely like that. Okay? And again, cool. Also, that doesn't change anything about it because that's not my problem. And he then went on to connect that to meaning I should have done something to stop that from happening. I have a big problem with that. So obviously, my problem with that was that I am not responsible. for what other people do to me, what their intentions might be. I am using the restroom and coming back out to sit with my boyfriend, and I am not doing anything. So if someone intercepts that and does something to me, why is that my job to stop? I don't know what he wanted me to do. I don't know. He wanted me to cause this huge ruckus and push this person. If this person had got up in my face and tried to give me a kiss or just been like all gropey and touchy-feely all over me and was like, oh, yeah, of course I would be like, stop and like, yell for someone. But that's not what was happening. And either way, clearly, what someone else does to you is not your fault. I don't know what he expected. He expected, oh, this person's telling me how grateful he is that his best friend has met a good person and he's glad that I'm in their lives and he would like me to keep coming around. Seems genuine. And he wanted me to be like,
don't touch me. Get off me.
First of all, I'm timid and there's no way I was going to do that. That's not reasonable. And so at the end of the day, I think any reasonable person would come to the conclusion that this is a problem that he is having about his friend. Okay? Because he admittedly said he thinks that his friend gets a little too touchy-feely when he gets drunk and crosses the line, and he doesn't like it that his friend hugged me. But what he was mostly saying was he didn't like it that I let his friend hug me, was what it came down to. I let his friend hug me. So I was to blame. The specific thing about the hug that my boyfriend really didn't like was that when this person hugged me, he kind of lifted me off the ground a little bit. He was quite a bit larger than me, not as in overweight, but he's a man. I'm a smaller, more petite woman. So lifting me up pretty much by a lot of people is not hard to do. And this person was a little bit, maybe a lot of it tipsy. I don't know. But it was just very boisterous, like bear hug type thing. It felt very Full House. It felt very sitcom. Like it wasn't anything, I'm telling you. I mean, you'll just have to trust me because either way, even if it wasn't, what am I going to do? Am I supposed to punch this person, beat them down? He gave me a hug. And even as a woman, I would say I've had a lot of experiences in my life where I wouldn't say this was one of them. If this had been something where I did feel really uncomfortable and I would want that not to be happening, like it was a threat to me or something, or it was just highly inappropriate. There's lots of situations, and you probably know as well, that women can be put in where it's not the best idea to, if you don't have to, make a big resistance. To put it bluntly, it can be not in your best interest as a woman to humiliate a man who is doing something like that if you don't have to. Obviously, you're gonna do what you need to do to be safe and not get treated inappropriately, but in certain situations, that is the best way to not get treated that way. So even if that were the case, which I'm saying it wasn't, but that's not far-fetched at all. Did I particularly desire to be hugged by this person? No. But did I feel offended by it or care that much? He was my boyfriend's nearly best friend. I felt happy that his friends liked me and were being so welcoming of me and were saying that they wanted me around. I mean, I didn't see anything inappropriate with it. I felt grateful that I was being treated so well. I didn't see it that way. The reason I've given this very detailed description here is to also illustrate all the ways that this type of treatment just makes you go through this rabbit hole. And it just makes you go through all the stressing of thinking over very specific details and doing mental gymnastics that you do not need to be doing. So all of these thoughts and all of these scenarios that I was having to think through, that you're watching right now, me reenact and kind of go back through, that is what it does to you. And that's just another of the many reasons why it's so messed up. I guess that if he saw it that way, which he clearly did, once I explain all of this, even if you once were thinking something that I should have done, that should have been absolved. And obviously your problem is with your friend. And you can have a discussion with your friend about, I don't feel comfortable when you hug my girlfriend outside of the context of greeting or saying bye. That's it. That's so simple. Why badger me about it for months? About something that I didn't do. Someone else did. So that is the point. I battled this one for weeks, months. He brought it up all the time. Nearly every time I saw him, every time I talked to him, there would be some reference to the fact that I hugged his friend. He would say things like,
well, we give everyone hugs, so, maybe I should give him a hug. Maybe I should hug him. Maybe I should hug her.
Like, it would just be like, all the time. It was so childish and so petty. And meanwhile, all this time, he's never addressing his friend. He decided to never bring it up to his friend. So didn't even mention it, but is badgering me constantly about it, making me feel like I was responsible to do something about that because I'm the one in the relationship with him and I should have made sure that person could not hug me. Mind you, hugs were never a problem prior to that moment. My boyfriend was a hugger. I have no problem with it. I never felt intimidated. I am not a jealous person. I never thought that of him. I fully trusted him. And he hugged people all the time. Men, women, it didn't matter. And I wouldn't say I'm necessarily a hugger myself, but I welcomed hugs. And I gave people hugs when I greet them, oftentimes. And it was never a problem. So this was wild. It was very clear that it was this specific hug and it was this specific person in this specific context because of what he's thinking about his friend. So why would that be my fault? It made no sense. I tried to battle this for months and it was just tearing me apart. It was such a stress. It was such an anxiety. It was so much. When someone's just causing such drama and issues in a relationship, they just drain you. They make your life hell. It's something you just don't need in your life. It's like we have enough to deal with in everyday life. You don't need a relationship where people are doing that to you over something so stupid, where they're addressing the wrong person, the person they shouldn't even be having a problem with, okay? So I thought I could solve it by fighting my side and convincing him that it was ridiculous that he's blaming me. But I couldn't. Eventually it died down. I heard about it less and less. It kind of fizzled out. This person was still always around, but this person never knew that in the background I was getting badgered about this all the time. So moving forward, I'm on the defense now because of that. And because of how he made me feel during that and how much that sucked. That's just such torture. I didn't want that to ever happen again. So of course, every time I'm around this person now, I'm just terrified. I don't feel emotionally safe. I'm worried the whole time about if this person's gonna suddenly try to hug me or what my boyfriend's gonna interpret, what's gonna happen that I'm not expecting, that I can't control, that I'm gonna get blamed for, and I'm just on edge all the time. So then this creates a dynamic where around his friends, I'm very closed off. I have a guard up. And of course, that can be interpreted by people in a number of ways. It just drives a wedge between me and his social group. And anyone who's been through something like this will understand that it's so painful when this is someone that up to this point you have thought is so in love with you and you're so in love with and you think this is your friend and they're treating you like this. And it's not, if that wasn't bad enough, the fact that they're putting this wedge between me and their friends now, and now I felt like I fit in, but now I have to be treated like this, so now that gets taken away and now I don't feel like I fit in. And then on top of that, hindsight's 2020, and I see all this so clearly looking back. But I've had a long time to really reflect on this, and it's just so upsetting. I feel so bad for myself at that time and what I allowed myself to endure, because a man that really, not even just a man, a person, anybody that loves their partner, if this was happening and they are upset about something that someone else did to them, which I'm not saying that this person did anything wrong necessarily. I'm never saying that. But he's the one that did the action, okay? And if any normal partner would have gone up to that person and been like, hey, I don't like when you do that. It's so unnerving to be held responsible somehow for something that someone else does towards you that you didn't even ask for. And then knowing that your person who's in every other sense tries to portray themselves as your protector, your friend, your person that cares about you, makes it your responsibility and then basically wages emotional war on you when someone else touches you that they're friends with, meanwhile never saying a word to that person. So at any given time, that person has no idea that this happened, so they could just do it again because they don't know that it's a problem, and then you'll be blamed again. It's absolute ridiculousness and torture when you haven't figured out what's going on yet, and you still think this person loves you and you're just lost. It's so terrible. And it was only a matter of time before something like this was going to happen again, and it did. Many months later, I was going to meet another group of his friends for the first time, a couple. We were at their house, and this same friend that he used to live with was there as well. And Same thing. My boyfriend, he's outside. It's at their house now, but it's outside the patio doors. Same thing. He's right there. I'm standing inside. I'm with his other friend's wife standing there. And this friend that he used to live with is standing next to me. And we're having a conversation. This person, while talking to me, reaches over and puts his hand on my shoulder. I don't even remember what he was saying to me, but he kind of like went like kind of shook my shoulder a little bit and was like,
come on now.
Like, I don't remember what he was saying to me, but it was lighthearted. Touched my shoulder, okay? Maybe like a little squeeze and kind of a shake. That was it. I was stonewalled the rest of the night. My boyfriend wouldn't talk to me. Went to bed without even telling me. I'm in this house of these people that I'm meeting for the very first time. And I'm again now being hardcore punished and ignored, stonewalled, silent treatment, treated like crap, isolated, blocked out, because someone else put their hands on me in a platonic way that was not inappropriate in my boyfriend's sight, right in front of him. And so this incident was different because it's like, okay, so the first time you were really hammering home that it was the fact that he hugged me so big that he kind of lifted my feet off the ground, and that was like his big focal point of the last time. Okay, well this time all he did was squeeze my shoulder in a conversation in broad view of everyone, and you're doing the same thing. So maybe it wasn't so much about that he lifted my feet off the ground the first time. Again, still something he did, still him. So if you don't think this person can be trusted around me, or like I shouldn't be trusted around this person, why do you keep bringing this person around me? Why do you keep bringing me to places where this person's going to be? And why are you even friends with this person if that's how you feel about them? And I'm not saying I agree with that at all, because I think it was very harsh on this person as well. There was absolutely no chance of there ever being anything happening between me and this person. So just the like lack of trust was just wild. To like call that person a good friend and to be in a relationship with me, a significant long-term serious relationship with me, and have this level of distrust and suspicion and insecurity about it was just wild. It's like, what do you actually think of us then? What do you actually think of your friend? Why are you friends with that person? And how do you obviously feel about me, and what are you thinking about me? Because clearly you don't trust me. And this time there was a witness, the person whose house we're staying in, the wife of the couple. She was in the conversation. She witnessed it. Of course, she didn't know she witnessed something because it was nothing. So she's not talking about it. But as I was badgered, once again, I was being badgered daily, pushing me to tears, just making me so frustrated. In every conversation, he's bringing it up, making little snide comments, just being rude to me, just treating me like crap, neglecting me, pushing me off, being a jerk, and continuously bringing it back to that. And so I finally just get so fed up with it. I'm like,
let's ask your friends who were there what they think of this. Why don't we do that?
and he was all about it. This is why I say this person was exhibiting some major traits of you know what. And I can't say that he is a full-blown you know what, but he showed a lot of traits. He was so confident that he was like,
yeah, let's do that. Let's do that.
He was dead in the wrong. Dead, like just no question about it. Just absolutely in the wrong. But was so confident that he was like,
yeah, let's do that. Let's go.
So he gets them in on a group chat, okay? And he starts out telling the story or bringing them in on what he's talking about. He's like,
Alyssa's in the conversation too. Want to ask you guys a question.
they're like, and then he starts off with this obscure roundabout way of starting to talk about it that has nothing really to do with it. It's so convoluted. They're sending GIFs like confused face. And I just come right out the gates. I'm like,
Boyfriend's mad that so-and-so touched my arm the other night, and he thinks it's my fault.
period. And then the wife was like,
Okay, because I was confused. I was like, what are you talking about?
and then so they start talking about it. And immediately, of course, the obvious answers. Whereas I don't think there was anything inappropriate going on. Also, even if there was, I think that your issue is with that guy, your friend, not your girlfriend. She can't control if he reaches out and squeezes her arm. If you find him to be someone that shouldn't be around your girlfriend, then you should probably stop bringing your girlfriend around him. And it's not her fault. And then his wife, who was standing right there when it happened, who witnessed it and knew exactly what moment he was talking about, told him very clearly there was nothing inappropriate about it. I saw nothing inappropriate happen. And even if you thought that him touching her arm was inappropriate, that's with him. And she said, the way that you're blaming her for this is kind of reminiscent or reminding me of how when people want to blame a victim who gets SA'd and say,
well, why was she wearing that? Well, what did you do to cause this to happen?
and she made it clear there was no SA involved. But it's like that because he obviously felt it was inappropriate. And if he felt that way, why is his anger or his issue directed at me? Is her point. And it seems equivalent to something like that. And why is he doing that? That's not right. She said this clearly to him. Her husband, which is one of his best friends from way back, agreed. Same stance. So it was in writing now, as in text. It was very blatant that his two friends who know me never before this incident, 100% telling him the exact same thing I'm telling him. Okay? So I thought,
perfect. This is great. Done. I don't need to worry about this anymore, right?
the wife even texted me separately. While this conversation is going on in the group chat, she's texting me separately going,
I like so-and-so, my boyfriend. I've known him for a long time. He's my husband's really good friend. But don't let anyone treat you like that's not right. How he's treating you, don't let anyone make you feel like that. You didn't do anything wrong. And it's a little weird.
and I was like,
Thank you for standing up for me.
I felt like, okay, good. Like, I'm not crazy. Hello. We get off of this conversation and then we're talking again. This man continues the same stance, despite what his friends just said. He sticks with his original point. Okay. And then he goes on to say later that he spoke to his friend, the husband, at a different time by themselves and explained the incident in more detail and that his friend actually agrees with him. And I was like,
Really? Okay. Well, that's convenient.
there's nothing to agree with because your point is, it makes no sense. Your point is that you should blame me for someone touching my arm. That doesn't make any sense. It was utter BS, okay? And that's what it comes down to. I would come to find out as the relationship went on, I would get blamed for a lot of things that other people did. Anything my brother did, my fault. Anything my son did, my fault. Anytime something happened with his sibling. At the beginning, he didn't even want me to have his sibling's phone number in my phone, and when he saw that his sibling was texting me, he was upset about that at me. I was gonna throw a birthday party at the house for his sibling because, I mean, there's no other reason besides I cared about her and it was her birthday and I wanted to do that. And because she announced it before I had a chance to text him and tell him about it because he was at work and we were at home. We had just talked about it and I didn't have time. She sent out a group text and he was then mad at me because he didn't hear about it first. It was ridiculous. It's so many things. So many times I was just getting constantly blamed for things that I realized at one point I have no control over when he's going to get mad at me because he is getting mad at me over things I can't control, like literally can't control. And that's when I knew that this was doomed. It's doomed. How can I make that better? I can't do anything about that. And it's completely ludicrous and unfair. So if you notice that your partner is blaming you for things that other people are doing, that is a huge red flag. That means that they are finding a need to punish you. They want to punish you for some reason. And they're not logically thinking through how they're treating you. And they're doing it for some self-serving purpose. And that matters more to them than how you feel and your well-being and how much they care about you. So this is a big, I definitely realized that I overlooked a lot of really silly things that were blazing red flags. And it's just that I know from firsthand experience, and I've then gone on to study it to understand this phenomenon. I just know how big of a blind spot your brain can create in relationships like these, where from the outside looking in, it seems so obvious, and then it can feel really shameful how obvious it is. But it wasn't so obvious then, and these are just pinpointed times of the havoc and the bad times, and not telling about the really happy and amazing times that were going on, prior to that or after that or interdispersed through that. And there were some of those, a lot of those. I should not have continued to work through that with him. I mean, it should have just been like, okay, dude, bye. I get that. And that's why I'm here to talk to you. I think that when we share our stories, it really can help to just kind of solidify. It's all about how many times you hear something and you really get it solidified in your brain so that you don't make those same mistakes, even when all those things are firing in you and all those chemicals and all that excitement and all of those things that make you make those seemingly idiotic decisions later. When you look at them later, hindsight's 20/20, and maybe I can save you from making one like that. I can further solidify it in myself to never make another one like that. And I care about you. Okay? And if you have stories about this red flag, please share them in the comments. Please share your experiences. I want to hear about anytime you were blamed in this way, you were scapegoated, what your experience is with that. Please write it. Also, if you are enjoying this content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I will not be gone long. I will be back very soon with red flag number 7. It's right around the corner. Make sure you hit the notification bell so that you'll know when that comes out. And don't forget, you're amazing and I love you. You are great. You deserve the very best. Okay? Don't ever underestimate yourself. All right? Till next time. Bye.